Hello and welcome to another YuGiOh video. And for once, you can actually see me. So this is an episode of Top Deck, the series where we take a look at some of the leading TCG deck lists. On today, we have Sebastian Dixon Smith with his Infernoid list that made top 8 at the Real Regional in the UK. Now, I'll be honest, this was a regional that, within Top Cut, wasn't dominated by the majority of meta decks, but if you look at the breakdown of what actually attended, there is a fair amount of Sky Striker, Orcust and Salamander within there. So this is definitely not something to be shunned, and the fact that it's an Infernoid list in the current 2020 meta, or 2019 it was at the time I guess, in 2020 meta is a pretty big deal. It's not something that's been super popular in the recent months, and the fact that you can play these cards and just DD Crow all of your opponent's resources away is kind of nuts. So quickly looking at the list, we have triple Decatron, double Petrinia, one Harmonic, double Antra, one Skete, double Sightstimus, one Atondel, double Deviati, and double Anunku. That's it for the Infernoid monsters. And then what we've seen being really popular recently is a Psy-Frame package, so one Driver and triple Gamma, because basically any time that you don't want your monsters on the field, it's very easy to actually take them off anyway. You've got your Void Vanishments, your Void Imaginations, 3 Lair of Darkness, so it's a Lair list. That does mean you can tribute your opponent's monsters, which is pretty nice. A triple Monster Gate, 1 Reasoning, a triple Super Poly, this is of course a blind second list, triple Extravagance, 1 Terraforming, and the 1 Void Feast. Sometimes you just break the board and then Void Feast in the following turn. For the extra deck, triple Tierra, you kind of have to play 3 copies of this if you're playing the Extravagance within the main deck. 3 Entus, there are no Herald of the Arclights within this build. 1 Equimax for your TKs, 1 Omega, 1 Hito, 1 Lambda, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, and 1 Nightmare Unicorn. For the super polling targets, it's just 2 Stubborn Infusion Dragon, and 1 of Plant, Trifioverutum. Great name, Konami, great name. So this card you make with 3 Dark monsters, but it's important to note that when you have Lair of Darkness on the field, all of your opponent's monsters are Dark monsters anyway, so you can use these cards to just trade away 3 of their monsters for 1 of your own, which is pretty nice to see. For the side deck, 1 extra Void Feast for when you know you're going first, 3 evenly matched when you can't do TK, 3 Twin Twisters, 3 Sanctum for going first with the 1 side, double Trap Trick to go with that, and you can search your Void Feast off that too. And then a double Denko Seka for going against the back row decks, where you just want to stick a Denko down and basically win from there. So if we take a look at the rounds that he played, it was a 6-round event. He had 1 loss and 1 draw, which allowed him to make it into Top Cup here. So round 1 against True Draco at 2-0. The opponent bricked and didn't draw any monsters, so he just kept poking them every turn. And then in game 2, the opponent went first in set 4, and Normal Summon Denko kind of seals off the game there. Round 2, Block Dragon BA, so this is Kian Blakey, who's been on the channel before. So Sebastian, whose deck profile we're looking at right now, he actually watched that video, so he knew what Kian was playing. But even though he did that, he still decided to go second, and Kian's deck is very much a go first deck that just puts Pachycephalo Dino, Fossil Dino onto the field, and then you just can't play after that. So he still decided to go second, used Gamma at the wrong time, and obviously Kian ended on a pretty huge board, which Seb then couldn't break. In game 2, he elected to go first and used the Sanctum and the Void Feast and Lair in order to win, and then in game 3 Kian got the full combo again, so unfortunately losing that one 1-2. Perhaps should have chosen first, but this deck doesn't really want to go first, there's so much in it that is forcing it to go second. Round 3 against Dino, a 2-1 win here, so losing game 1 because the opponent decided to go second, and then Sebastian bricked. But then game 2, the opponent went first, they made a rank 9 Fortress thing and a Dolka, but Void Imagination just allows you to win through practically any board, so that was enough there. And then game 3, the opponent bricked again, and he opened Void Feast, so what can you do? Round 4 against Orcust, again, it was a video that he watched. This was actually Luke Forshaw's list, which you can also check out on the channel. So that was a Sky Striker Orcust list. And in this case, he watched it, made the opponent go first because it doesn't really matter too much, ended with a very grindy 30-minute game. Managed to win that one using the DD Crow effect of the Noids just so much. But then in game 2, the opponent went first again, which really surprised him. So the side decking was totally wrong for that. and then Luke managed to win that game on time by having more life points, so ending with a 1-1 draw in that one. Round 5, another Sky Striker Orcus player. This time, game 1, the opponent bricked and passed by setting 1 card, which was a call by the grave. Very unfortunate. So Sebastian just summoned 2 Infernoids, activated Lair, and won by DD-crowing all of the stuff in the grave, and did exactly the same thing in game 2. And round 6 was against Salamangrate, a 2-0. It's what this deck does. You've got so much advantage over them by the fact that you can banish all of their graveyard resources. So yeah, it becomes kind of insane at that point. Alright, so if we take a quick look at the siding strategy that we have here. So against Orcust, he's putting in the Scythe and the Sanctums and the Void Feast when going first. It's essentially an FTK if you can resolve it, which is fair enough. Taking out the Gammas and Driver and Reasoning because you're not going first, so it doesn't really matter. Going second, no changes there. Obviously you build a going second deck to try and beat the most popular deck of the format, so it's pretty reasonable to not have any changes against it. For Salamangrate, same thing for going second, but for going first, we see the Sanctum, 3 Sanctum and the 1 Scythe coming in. He's not putting in the Void Feast, so he's not putting in the Trap Tricks either. And then he's taking out 1 Reasoning and 3 Super Poly. So this is something I asked him about, was he often takes out the 1 Reasoning because he's just had bad experience with the mills that you can get. Everyone knows to call 1 against Infernoid anyway, so they're always going to hit the Decatron. And because most Infernoid lists at the moment don't have a plethora of actual Infernoid monsters, you know, it's a fairly limited count here. And also it's even less in other lists. Your Reasoning and your Monster Gates, they don't resolve as well as they used to in the like 60 card grass versions of the deck. Deck 4, so if he's going against Draco decks or other back row decks, he'll put in the Denko Sekkers, the Twin Twisters and the Evenleys, take out the Driver Gammas, Void Imaginations and Super Polys as well. And then for going second, exactly the same, because it's one of these slower decks, so you can just break the board over several turns instead of over 1 turn, so it doesn't really make much difference. And then for Thunder Dragons, the combo version and the pure version, exactly the same siding strategies for both. When going first, you put in the Scythes, the Sanctums, and the Void Feast, and you take out the Driver and the Gammas. And the Reasoning. So, pretty standard, not masses to say on that one. So let's move on to the more traditional questions. So I asked him how the event was. He said it was pretty well run, although space at the top tables was fairly tight. He in later rounds they switched this around so that the top tables got more room, which is pretty nice of them. He decided to play Infernoids because he's played the deck a fair bit before, so he knows how it operates, and he felt like he had a really good Saladin Orcus matchup. And these are the two. Well, okay, so Sky Striker Orcus is the most popular deck, at least over the last couple of months in the UK, from Top Cuts. Salamangrate is reasonably popular, and we expect it to become more popular as we go on, so it's a fairly reasonable meta call to take something that tries to beat Salad. The hardest matchups are back row decks and decks that don't use the extra deck, because your Void Imaginations do nothing, your Super Polys do nothing, but since the best play, which is just Imagination, no longer really works against those kinds of deck, they can be pretty hard to face off against them. But the easiest, he says, is Salamangrate, so pretty reasonable. Compared to other lists, he says that he does play a slightly lower Infernoid count. He feels like you need a decent amount of noise. He has a slightly higher Infernoid count. He feels like you do need a decent amount of Infernoids in order to gain as much value off of your Void Imagination, your Reasoning, your Monster Gate, all of that kind of stuff. And we do see it's very low counts in a lot of other versions of the deck. And he said that it meant his Imagination was obviously a lot more viable later in the game than potentially other versions of the list. Any changes he'd make, he says potentially change the Reasoning for a 1-for-1. Most players don't have enough knowledge of the deck to call... do have enough knowledge of the deck to call level 1 anyway, so your Reasoning isn't super powerful, but it does do a fair amount of milling, so it's really a toss-up between those. And then in terms of the upcoming sets, he's really excited about the one that has Senka in it, so that's Ignition Assault, which will be out towards the end of January, I'm pretty sure. So it's probably not a meta deck, but it looks like it'll be a lot of fun. Otherwise there's not much that's really going to impact this particular deck. Although there is Void Calamity, which could have some impact in the future, which might be pretty interesting as well, although potentially it's just BA support in disguise. So shoutouts go to Martin and Chris, who we travelled with, his friends at the event Jason, Tyler and Jazz, to everyone at Manaflux YuGiOh, and also to the Telford YuGiOh Club. So thanks for coming on, Sebastian, sharing your list and your insights. What do you guys think about this Infernoid list? Would you take this to a competitive event? Would you play Infernoid in the current meta? That's really something to discuss, actually. We've seen so much Skystrike Orcus, perhaps Infernoid is a really good way to go to counteract that, because you could just banish all the resources from the grave. Thanks for watching this video. Let me know if you have any suggestions in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.